Hello, Namaste. So today we're going to look into the prefatory verses called Setting the Scene for the Upadeṣa-Undiyar. And I have to apologize and make a correction. Last time around I was saying that Undiyar means the same as Sāra in Sanskrit, the essence, the import, or the deep meaning. And it doesn't. It turns out Undiyar is a meter of Tamil poetry. So Upadeṣa-Undiyar means a poem in that meter. It must be a tradition or a standard in Tamil literature. So sorry about that. We didn't do our homework. Bad. So now let's look into this a little further. The structure of Upadeṣa-Undiyar is that first there's 5 prefatory verses setting the scene. Then verses 1 to 2 condemn selfish karma. Verses 3 to 7 teach that selfless karma leads towards self-realization. In verses 8 to 10, it's revealed that meditation on the self is the highest process. Verses 11-15 describe Raja-yoga, and verses 16 to 30 describe Jñāna-yoga. And finally, there's an appendix, which is the conclusion of the whole thing. Now, the prefatory verses are not original. They're not written by Bhagwan. They are the prefatory verses and the appendix, the conclusion of the work, are from the song Tiruvundiyar in a work called Tiruvachakam, a collection of Tamil devotional poems by the poet Manik-kavachakar. Now, kavacha is a book of poems. So kavachakar, karta means to make something. Kavachakar is a man who makes books. So, of course. And his name must have been Manik. So the first prefatory verse is written by Muruganar, Bhagwan's disciple. Know that Upadeṣa-Undiyar is a light of knowledge, Jnana, which our Father Rāmaṇa composed and bestowed upon Muruganar, who entreated graciously revealed the secret of spiritual practice, sādhana, so that the people of the world may attain liberation and be saved by giving up the delusion of action, karma. Now, of course, this is in very high Tamil poetic language, but the import is very easy to understand. Right now, the whole world, beginning with the Western culture, and of course Western culture is now spread everywhere due to modern education. Everyone believes now that karma is the principle of the whole world, isn't it? Cause and effect. You do this and you get that. So they don't really believe that God or the Supreme has any agency or is a cause of anything, but that everything is controlled by cause and effect, and if you do this, you get that. It's all mechanical. So, of course, this leads to a gradual degradation in human consciousness. It leads to a world where everyone is cheating, everyone is lying. We live in a post-truth society now. Why? Because, hey, you just make it up. Whatever you like, whatever you want to see, you just put it out there. And then if you can make it stick, if you have enough power, it'll go. Otherwise, it won't. But that's not really truth. That's just another form of karma. However, in another sense, looking at it from the highest point of view, this whole world is a lie. How is that? Because we try to ascribe real being and permanence to a world where nothing stays the same for very long. The Buddha said there are three characteristics of material existence. And the first one is impermanence. The second one is that everything is unsatisfactory and causes suffering. Everything. And the third one is no self. If you look at this material world, everything is more or less dead, mechanical. Nothing is really the self. To find the self, you have to look inside. You will never find it by looking outside through the senses. That's just the way it is. And let's not waste time theorizing how it got that way. But if we observe it, we can immediately see that really is how it is. So the question is not how the world was created or how it got to be the way it is, but what can we do about it? And of course, the various answers that have come up over time are the different religions and spiritual paths. Because obviously, just trying to change the world mechanically isn't going to help. Human society has been trying to change the world through politics, philosophy, religion, science, economics, and so many other things for thousands of years. Has it really changed? No. It's still temporary, unsatisfactory, and non-self. And because of that, it's painful to live here. And because it's painful, we're seeking a way out. But the way out is not going to be found out there. The way out is going to be found within. And that's what this book is about, and that's what all Rāmaṇa's teachings are about. And so this section is to set the scene, and he tells a little story. Those who were performing austerities, tapas, in the Dāraka forest were heading for ruin by following the path of purva karma. Now, this is a pun, of course. Many Sanskrit and Tamil works contain interesting puns. And it also illustrates the importance of meter, or matra, in Sanskrit and languages like it. So, Dāraka is a tree, similar to cedar, very fragrant wood. Dāruka, with a long A, means a forest of those trees. And Dāruka, two long A's, means a wooden doll, a puppet, made from that kind of wood. So you see, these men, who were probably Brahmins, very proud of their caste status, were performing austerities and sacrifices in the forest to get material things. They selfishly wanted wealth, power, fame, women, and maybe mystical powers, and ultimately liberation. But that was a long way down the list. They're doing everything for their own selfish benefit. And so they didn't realize this, but they're actually just puppets. They're puppets of their mind and senses. If we identify with the mind, we think, oh, I am thinking these wonderful thoughts, so intelligent. But actually, we are simply being manipulated by the senses. We get impressions through the senses and they become memories. And then we think, oh, that was a good memory, let me do that again. Or that was a bad memory, so let me avoid that in the future. And so we come up with all kinds of plans to do this and not do that. And so what these men were doing was simply an extension of their previous experiences. Therefore, being conditioned by the mind and memory, they were simply puppets. Dāruka. the next verse. Because of their deceptive self-conceit, they became intoxicated with excessive pride, saying, "There is no God except karma." So isn't this the philosophy of the whole world today? See, it's not that, this is not just esoteric religious work for specialists or scholars or people who are really into this particular religion. This is an essay on the truth of the way things are in the world today. It's still like that. Now, a very interesting term here, self-conceit. Self with a small s, not a capital S. Now, the Buddha describes how the ego is created in the Mula-pariyaya Sutta. Mula-pariyaya Sutta, he says that when an impression is received through the senses, the mind immediately forms a conceit. A conceit is something that is conceived, like a conception. You've heard the word conceptual, a concept. And this concept is I am. And not the real I, but the false I, the ego. So this I am is then projected on or overlaid upon the incoming sense perceptions. So let's say I see this camera in front of me and I go, this is my camera. Or I look out the window, this is my window. Or I see the pretty view outside and I go, oh, this is my view. Isn't my view wonderful? I try to enjoy it. So this enjoyment of I and mine is basically illusory because it's something that we project or overlay on the impressions coming in through the senses. So that's what these men were doing, except they were doing it on a vast scale. They had great powers due to their knowledge of Vedic sacrifice. And so they were misusing this knowledge for their own selfish benefit. So let me read the full story that comes from that book that I referred to earlier. To bring these deluded ascetics to the path of liberation, moksha, Lord Shiva graciously took the form of a mendicant and entered the Dwaraka forest accompanied by Lord Vishnu, who had taken the form of a beautiful enchantress, Mohini. As soon as they saw the enchantress, the ascetics were overwhelmed with lust, which is so powerful by nature that it can overthrow even the most dispassionate people in spite of any amount of austerities, tapas, that they might have performed, so long as they have not attained the true knowledge of reality. Forgetting their daily ritual practices, the ascetics began to follow the enchantress, but soon she eluded them and disappeared. In the meantime, seeing the divine luster of the mendicant, who was Lord Shiva himself, the wives of the ascetics forgot themselves and began to follow him. So you can imagine these guys. First they see the beautiful enchantress Mohini, and they go wandering off in the forest somewhere, and of course she loses them. And then they're like, what happened? We better go back to camp. And when they get back, they find that their wives are gone. And probably some servant tell them, or maybe they knew through mystical powers, that their wives had wandered off and following Vishnu, or following Shiva. So, having come to know this, the ascetics became furious and started to perform a sacrificial oblation intended to bring harm upon others. Now this right here is the proof that they were not self-realized. Because anyone who has self-realized will never perform actions intended to harm others. Why? Because he realizes that others are the same as his self. There is no difference. One time, Rāmaṇa was asked, how should we relate to others? His answer was, there are no others. So anyone who intends to hurt others is definitely not self-realized. So from their sacrificial oblation arose a wild tiger, an elephant, a fire, a trident, and other such weapons, which they set upon the mendicant in order to kill him. However, the mendicant, who was Shiva, killed the wild animals and wore their skins as clothing, and held the other weapons, such as the trident and fire, in his hands. Thus the ascetics saw that even the weapons which arose from that yajna, which was the most powerful karma, were rendered useless in front of the mendicant, and hence they understood he was God himself. So this was to teach them there is something more powerful than karma. I mean, to bring it into the modern context, these people today who are following science and materialistic processes of karma, cause and effect, they all have to deal with death. The greatest science, the greatest amount of money or power or beauty or fame or whatever cannot stop death. Death is going to come. It may be today or tomorrow. It may not be for 100 years, but it's coming. So there is a force more powerful than karma. And that has to do with life itself, God. Only God can give life, and only God can take it away. And when it's your time, there's nothing you can do about it. No atomic weapon can stop God from taking your life when it's over. So they saw the fruit of actions done to spurn God, the karta or ordainer, who gives the fruit of actions, karma phala, and lost their pride. One will lose one's pride in front of God because he can never be as powerful. By imbibing and following this Upadeṣa-Undiyar, the essence of spiritual instructions, bliss will arise from within, and the miseries within will be destroyed. So in other words, the suffering which is due to the problems of existence in the material world, which the Buddha distilled into temporary existence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. All these can be destroyed by contacting the self within and realizing that I am He, Soham. I am that Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. So may the import, saram, of Upadeṣa-Undiyar enter our heart. May abundant joy be attained. May suffering cease. May it cease. And that is our prayer for ourselves and for all others. May all suffering cease by this great knowledge. Om Tat Sat. Hari Om.